U.S. foreign policy. President Trump talks to Russian leader Vladimir Putin for the first time since the U.S. strike on Syria. Pro-life push. My one-on-one interview with a Maryland lawmaker who's fighting for conscience rights. A faithful education. We'll take a look at a newly released guide ranking Catholic colleges around the country. And by the grace of God, a tornado destroys a Catholic church in Texas. Parishioners miraculously survive. On EWTN News Nightly for Tuesday, May 2nd, 2017. Good evening from Washington, D.C., and thank you to those of you joining us from around the world for news from a Catholic perspective. I'm Lauren Ashburn. Ahead of an expected vote on a bipartisan budget deal, President Trump says he has a plan to fix what he calls a mess in the Senate. The president tweeted this morning the reason for the plan negotiated between the Republicans and Democrats is that we need 60 votes in the Senate, which are not there. We either elect, he says, more Republican senators in 2018 or change the rules now to 51%. Our country needs a good shutdown in September to fix mess! The tweets are causing frustration among Senate Republicans. Correspondent Wyatt Goolsbee is at the White House, where the president's budget director also addressed this call for a shutdown. Good evening, Wyatt.
Lauren, good evening. The director of the Office of Management and Budget, Mick Mulvaney, says a government shutdown is not the goal. He says Democrats were desperate to make the administration look like they couldn't function. Mulvaney instead shifted the focus to the president's priorities, getting pressed about what is and is not in the budget. That included a question about Planned Parenthood.
This bill includes all of the traditional protections for the pro-life movement, including the Hyde Amendment. And what we simply decided was, look, if you want to take a vote on the Hill to stake out your position on Planned Parenthood, do it on the health care bill. And the outside groups agreed with us on that. The pro-life movement agreed with that.
Mulvaney also wanted to make it clear that Trump isn't backing down on his border wall. He says there are several $100 million in the budget to build reinforced see-through walls along the southern border.
There's been a dramatic reduction in attacks on our Border Patrol agents where they can see through the wall because nobody's throwing anything over the top at them. This is what DHS wanted. It's also half of the cost, so we can build twice as much of it.
Director Mulvaney describes this as an unexpected second bite at the 2017 budget apple that the administration was happy to get. Lauren?
Wyatt, I understand the budget director and the president each emphasized today that they broke the parity rule when negotiating this budget. What is that?
Yes, Lauren, Director Mulvaney referenced the unwritten deal on Capitol Hill mandating that for every dollar spent on defense, there needs to be $1 of non-defense spending. But this time, Mulvaney says they didn't go dollar for dollar. They got $21 billion of new defense money for less than $5 billion for non-defense spending. Mulvaney calls this a huge win and a tremendous development for the president. Lauren?
Wyatt Goolsbee reporting from the White House. Thank you, Wyatt. President Trump aims to revive talks with Russia, beginning with today's phone call to President Vladimir Putin. It's their third call since he took office, and the first since Putin denounced the U.S. military strike on Syria, which the president ordered after Syria's military reportedly used chemical weapons to attack civilians. Trevor Thrall, an international security expert, says the U.S. strike on Syria may end up helping the U.S. relationship in the long run.
Trump may have made, at least put a little marker out to the Russians saying, we're going to lean on you guys to do some more diplomacy to try to move things along towards peace more quickly, or else, who knows what we might do next.
Pope Francis is urging world leaders to seek solutions through diplomacy first, saying the size and scale of a wider war could be devastating to the human race. Republican House leaders who are scrambling to get enough votes to replace Obamacare and defund Planned Parenthood are dealt a significant blow today. A respected moderate says he opposes the newest health care proposal. Capitol Hill correspondent Jason Calvi reports. Good evening, Jason.
Good evening, Lauren. Every single vote matters for Republicans to get this bill passed, and House Republicans are short of the 216 votes needed. Michigan's Fred Upton is now opposing the bill, saying it will undermine coverage for people with pre-existing conditions. But supporters of the health care bill say those people will actually be protected.
I think it's time now, right?
Time to fulfill a campaign promise to repeal Obamacare. But Republicans have had a hard time getting on the same page. The conservative House Freedom Caucus originally called the GOP health care plan Obamacare Light, but now they're backing the revisions.
I do believe ultimately we're going to be driving premiums down. For me, that's what it's all about, driving premiums down for every American.
Freedom Caucus Chairman Mark Meadows says the Republican plan will take care of people with pre-existing conditions.
As it used to be that if you had insurance and you got diagnosed with a chronic disease, that your premiums could go up. We have a protection that says no, that can't happen.
The health care bill allows states to obtain waivers letting insurers raise premiums on people with pre-existing illnesses only if the customer lets their coverage lapse. The Congressional Budget Office warned the original GOP plan would have left 24 million more Americans uninsured by 2026.
How many million don't have access to health care right now under Obama because they can't afford the deductible, right, which is 10 grand or whatever?
3 conservatives in the House, including Kentucky's Thomas Massey, are still not on board.
Obamacare is like a game of Jenga, and we're going to pull out a few blocks, and it's going to collapse sooner if this bill passes.
But other Republicans say it's time to back it.
I think people recognize we need to get this done. Such a strong conservative bill and a strong pro-life bill, too.
House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy says Republicans are getting very close to capturing the needed votes. Vice President Mike Pence is here at the Capitol meeting moderate lawmakers who are now the last Republican holdouts on the health care bill. Lauren?
What is the timeline for getting the health care reform bill approved?
President Trump and Speaker Ryan hope it will pass the House before the chamber's week-long recess beginning this weekend. Trump ally Representative Chris Collins tells me if the bill doesn't pass this week, it will be much harder to pass because protests and opposition will have much more time to target Republicans to say no.
That would be very bad news for the administration. Jason Calvi on Capitol Hill. Thank you, Jason. The Justice Department says it needs better data on religious hate crimes to fully address the problem.
The people who hate aren't terribly discriminating in their victims. If someone is angry at Muslims, they'll attack Sikhs, Middle Easterners, people who look different. So that we always look at those as a general problem that we need to address holistically.
The Senate Judiciary Committee held a hearing on the spike in religious hate crimes in the U.S. The Justice Department will be holding a summit next month to take the issue to local law enforcement and religious leaders. Also on Capitol Hill, members of the House Foreign Affairs Subcommittee heard from a group of experts aimed at stopping human trafficking.
The cost benefits to taxpayers for preventing or mitigating human trafficking at an early stage are enormous.
The bill, Frederick Douglass Reauthorization Act, would reauthorize $130 million in funding for the prevention of human trafficking and the protection of victims. The bill is co-sponsored by New Jersey Republican Representative Chris Smith and Democrat Karen Bass of California. It will be marked up and debated tomorrow. Churches in California are required to pay for abortions, thanks to a ruling by the Obama administration. But pro-life lawmakers are asking the White House to step in and enforce the Weldon Amendment, a law protecting churches from paying for abortions. Joining us now is Representative Andy Harris, a Republican from Maryland. Welcome back to the program.
Good to be with you.
You met with Health and Human Services Secretary Tom Price last week about state regulations that require California churches to pay for abortions. What did you ask the administration to do?
Well, we asked the administration to reconsider enforcement of what's called the Weldon Amendment, which is a conscience protection that disallows any state from passing laws that basically would require insurers or anyone to provide abortions against conscience protection. There's another law in California we asked them to look into that actually would require pregnancy centers to refer people for abortions. We think a pretty clear violation of the Weldon Amendment. The last administration was unwilling to enforce the Weldon Amendment. We think this administration will.
Well, the conscience rights that you talk about, explain that briefly.
Representative Weldon, when he was in Congress, attached this legislation that said that you basically that everyone's conscience had to be protected, including the ability of any health care provider not to have to provide abortion, insurance companies not to have to cover abortions. Again, in this case, we think it covers pregnancy centers not to have to refer for abortions. This is a pretty clear protection we think that we all deserve under the First Amendment, and thank goodness Congressman Weldon put this protection in. In my mind, shame on the last administration for not enforcing it.
Let's move on to Vice President Pence, who's on the Hill today. He's working on health care. Michigan Representative Fred Upton, who's a moderate Republican, says he is against the latest GOP plan. Representative, what is it going to take to get Republicans on the same page?
I don't know. I know Vice President Pence is working around the clock. I think the president's going to get back into this. This is a great plan we have now. As you know, it defunds Planned Parenthood, which is a goal that many of us have had for many, many years. It also takes the Affordable Care Act and it changes it in many ways that I think makes it better, makes it more affordable, makes insurance more affordable. So again, the administration, the leadership is working to change those few minds that we need in order to have a majority of votes and hopefully to pass this on Thursday this week.
That last round was really a blow to the president, that health care round. How is his relationship right now with Congress? Would you say it's adversarial, good?
I think it's good. I think again, with the Republicans in Congress, I think it's a good relationship. I think that he probably realizes that this version of the health care bill was actually better, not only for him, but for the country especially, and for people who have to buy insurance than the last version. I think he is disappointed, though, that, again, he tried to reach across the aisle to get people on the other side of the aisle to work with him, whether it's on the budget that we're going to vote on, whether it's on this health care bill, and was rebuffed.
Okay, well, thanks for checking in with us. We appreciate it. Representative Andy Harris of Maryland. The State Department extends its long-standing travel alert for U.S. citizens visiting Europe. It says ISIS may attempt more terror attacks following incidents in France, Russia, Sweden, and the United Kingdom. The State Department says Americans should always be alert, especially in popular tourist spots. The travel alert expires September 1st. Pope Francis's trip to Egypt last weekend is being hailed as a success by both religious and mainstream media in that country and beyond. The Holy Father condemned any violence carried out in God's name and bolstered the Christian community there as they continue to be targets of terrorism. Edward Patton Rome, correspondent for EWTN's National Catholic Register, traveled with the Pope to Egypt and joins us from Rome with more. Edward, this trip barely lasted 27 hours, but the impact is going to continue for years and years to come. Now, going into this trip, the persecution of Egypt's Christians dominated the headlines. Do you think that his visit is going to help their situation, and if so, how?
Well, it's hard to tell, Lauren, if it's actually going to reduce the persecution, or rather the violence against, sporadic violence against Christians. But what it will do, at the very least, is give the Christians hope there, and especially the Catholic Copts, who are a very small number, just under 300,000. And I think the Pope coming there, they say, makes them feel that they count and that they're noticed and that their suffering is being noticed. And I think that's probably the biggest thing that to come out of this visit. I think that's probably the best thing for the Christians in terms of the persecution question.
It seems like he had a good meeting with Egypt's President el-Sisi. How would you gauge the impact the Pope had on the Muslim community there?
Very good. I think both Christians and Muslims are coming together against this common foe of ISIS and Islamic extremism, and I think his visit just brought them together. I saw that very clearly at the Mass on the Saturday, where Muslims were there as well, and they were just very happy that the Pope was there, and there was this united front against ISIS, who was who was seen as the common enemy out there. So I think that was a great success of the visit.
The visit had political ramifications for the president, who, after the Arab Spring, I remember, wanted to show the world that the country is stable and ready to be back on the world stage, not to mention tourism. Do you think that visit helped him do that?
Yes, I mean, it was a very short visit, of course, just 27 hours because of the security risk. And I think the fact that there was no security incident, I think, comes as a great relief, probably, to the Egyptian government. And it shows that it is quite a safe place, at least for that short time. But I think they're probably very relieved that nothing happened. And President Al-Sisi invited the Pope, and I think he wanted this visit to show that it is stable and secure.
All right, Edward Patton Rome, correspondent for EWTN's National Catholic Register. Thanks, Ed.
Thanks, Laura.
Coming up, an update on the plight of Christian refugees.
We do not want a Middle East without Christians.
And leaders of the democracy movement in Hong Kong join us from Capitol Hill. It's the feast of Saint Athanasius, the 4th century bishop of Alexandria, is known as the father of orthodoxy and is a doctor of the church. He was driven into exile at least 5 times for insisting on the Nicene Creed as the church's authoritative rule of faith. He died in 373. The head of the Church of England calls for a solution to the migrant crisis. Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, traveled to Jordan to visit with Christian refugees who fled violent extremism in Iraq. Welby says it's important to help Christians in the area so they're not forced to leave.
We do not want a Middle East without Christians. Christians are the past in the Middle East, they're the present, and they must be the future.
Archbishop Welby says we need to provide opportunities and hope to persecuted Christians. Many of them now face poverty. Christians make up 10% of Hong Kong's population. This year marks the 20th anniversary of the British handover of Hong Kong to China. Now, what is the current state of democracy in the one country, two systems policy? Joining us now is Martin Lee, founding chairman of the Democratic Party in Hong Kong, and Joshua Wong, a leader of Hong Kong's umbrella movement. Welcome to the program. President Trump is making efforts to develop a stronger relationship with Chinese President Xi, and both met Florida and Mar-a-Lago in April. And while they're doing that, China is threatening democratic relations with Hong Kong. Tell me about your efforts to bring democracy to Hong Kong over the last 40 years.
We have yet to have our freedoms protected by a democratic system. Democracy was promised to us in our mini constitution, the Basic Law, but Beijing kept on postponing it until now, 20 years after the handover, and there's still no sight of democracy. And without democracy, Hong Kong people cannot be masters of our own house.
Joshua, in 2014, you were one of the leaders of the Umbrella Movement, a pro-democracy political movement in Hong Kong. You were fighting for autonomy, freedom, human rights, and there is a new Netflix documentary, which will be released on May 26th, about your political actions, titled Joshua, Teenager versus Superpower. It received the World Cinema Documentary Audience Award at Sundance. What is the Umbrella Movement doing now, and why do you believe the future of Hong Kong should be decided by Hong Kong?
Umbrella Movement is the movement we organized 3 years ago with civil disobedience to fight for democracy, with human rights advocacy, and especially focusing on press freedom, religious freedom, and also rights of assembly.
Martin, part of your movement focuses on religious freedom. According to the CIA World Fact Book, 10% of people in Hong Kong are Christian. What are some of their struggles?
Well, at the moment in Hong Kong, religious freedom is still okay. But we are concerned that because there is no religious freedom in mainland China, unless we have democracy, unless through our vote we can elect our democratically elected leaders, there is no guarantee that the religious freedom can be maintained.
Martin Lee, founding chairman of the Democratic Party in Hong Kong, and Joshua Wong, a leader of Hong Kong's Umbrella Movement. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Parishioners in a small Texas town share their survival story after a tornado destroyed their church. About 45 people were inside this church at the time of the storm. They took shelter in a hallway. The Diocese of Tyler, Texas says, by the grace of God and the protection of Our Lady, no one was injured. We spoke to Monica Hughes earlier today. She's the youth director at the church. She helped save the day by holding the doors closed as the wind picked up.
I felt Jesus hovering, leaning over us. As we protected each other in that space, I felt him doing the same thing above us. And I heard him telling me, "It's okay, I've got you."
Wow. That gave me goosebumps. The next morning, parishioners held Mass outside the church. The parish priest said they will rebuild a new church quickly. To see more of the storm's aftermath at the church, visit our news partner, CatholicNewsAgency.com. Up next, important advice for parents and students looking for a Catholic college faithful to church teaching. The new federal spending bill includes a Republican-led provision for school choice. It extends a private school voucher program through 2019. That money is designed to help students in Washington, D.C.'s troubled school system. For 10 years, the Newman Guide to Choosing a Catholic College has helped families searching for a faithful college education. Published by the Cardinal Newman Society, a Catholic educational group, this year's edition lists 29 Catholic colleges and universities. Patrick Riley, president of the Cardinal Newman Society, joins us now. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
This is a handy little book since my son is 17 and we're looking at colleges.
Mine too, yes.
Oh,
I'm in the same stage.
The criteria you use when choosing these schools, what it goes into that?
Yeah, so we don't have a numerical rating because we want to look at these schools top to bottom, and our criteria is basically that a young person from a faithful Catholic family can go to these schools and get a strong formation. Part of Catholic education is formation, that they're prepared for life, both to serve God and to serve man in their careers and in everything that they do.
What do you advise families to consider when they're trying to find that right fit?
Look very carefully at everything, including the student life and the campus life. I mean, when we all look back on our college experiences, we look back on so much more than what happened in the classroom. And so it's very important to look at what happens outside the classroom and take that very seriously.
Several of these schools had a dramatic increase in enrollment. Let's take a look. Ave Maria University in Florida, 75% enrollment increase in 7 years. Belmont Abbey College, one of the oldest schools, had an increase in North Carolina of 70% in 5 years. Wyoming Catholic College up 150% in 7 years. Why is there a growing demand for Catholic education?
Yeah, I think it's growing demand and growing awareness. I think a lot of Catholic families today are increasingly aware that there is a real distinction between, there are over 200 Catholic colleges in this country, and there's a big difference between where you go, the type of formation that you're going to get, the strength of the Catholic identity that you'll find.
So what you're saying is these are the Catholic of the Catholic?
Yeah, that's exactly what they are. We hold these up as models. They are not the only Catholic institutions, but we do think that they are models for all the other institutions to follow.
Pontifical University of St. Thomas Aquinas, Our Lady Seat of Wisdom, Holy Apostles College and Seminaries. These are other recommended programs. Walsh University, University of St. Thomas. How do people get a hold of this book?
Well, it's published entirely online, so anyone can access it there. We also provide the printed edition available for sale on our website, so they simply need to go to cardinalnewmansociety.org and access it either online. There's actually far more information online
than there is in this little tiny book, right?
So we certainly encourage people to do that regardless.
And I also noticed you have a free online magazine, My Future, My Faith, and that also can help.
That's correct.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Patrick Riley, president of the Cardinal Newman Society.
Thank
we
you.
appreciate it.
Okay.
For all of us here at EWTN News Nightly, to all of you around the world, I'm Lauren Ashburn. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter. You can watch us on YouTube. I'll see you again tomorrow night. Good night, and God bless. Well, thank you. I love this.